was doing the laundry, I was doing the dishes, I cleaned the windows because they look really cloudy and the weather's suddenly getting nice. We do a lot on top of the other things we do. And yes, men are perfectly capable of doing it as well, but they just don't necessarily do it. So
they just don't see that it needs to be done.
I don't know what happens there, but anyway.
We'll go there.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you very much to the organisers, particularly to Mary and Agnes, for inviting me and asking me to speak to you about the Limbo Project. So, as you can see, I'm sporting the T-shirt, and we have produced 2 books side by side. We are a not-for-profit organisation. We're entirely self-funded and funded through crowdfunders and sales of the book. That has enabled us to give as gifts over 1,000 books so far to politicians to make them aware of our testimonies, of our real lived experiences. So I'm not here alone, actually. In these books, with me, standing right here next to me, are 300 people. And these 300 people, 150 here and 150 here, we are a tiny little fragment of the 5 million people who are actually most keenly affected by Brexit. And we're our own organisation, but we work extremely closely, in particular with the 3 million. We actually kind of grew out of the 3 million, and also the British in Europe, and locally with European Movement Merseyside, also Liverpool for Europe, and lots of other Remainer organisations, but also organisations for EU citizens, EU 27 citizens, also wider migrants. So I, for example, also try to liaise and correlate with One Day Without Us, which is an organisation for migrants all over the world. So we are still really in limbo, and we have been in this uncertainty for nearly 1,000 days. That's nearly 3 years of not being able to plan for the future and not knowing what your rights will be in April 2019. That's next month. That's 4 weeks away, and I don't know whether I will have the right to medical treatment, for example, or whether I will be asked to pay to get treatment on the NHS in the same way as third country nationals are. You can add to that our approximately 15 million British citizen family members, and about a third of the British population has been silenced. So in order to find each other and then be able to amplify our voices, we started the Facebook group Our Brexit Testimonies actually on the 10th of March 2017. So it'll be our 2nd birthday on Sunday, and we're going to have to do something. We haven't quite worked it out yet because we're too busy just keeping all the balls in the air. We published our first book, In Limbo, Brexit Testimonies from EU Citizens in the UK, on the first anniversary of the referendum. And then in 2018, we collaborated with the group Brexpats Hear Our Voice to publish the second book, In Limbo 2, on the second anniversary of the referendum. The In Limbo 2 testimonies speak of the anger of the British citizens resident in Europe. They feel not only betrayed, as we all do, but they are also ashamed and feel really cast adrift. They're incensed, they're absolutely furious that we are being used as bargaining chips, and I have the chip on my shoulder to prove it. The British government, Theresa May, claimed that this was done to secure our rights. That's not true. There is only one purpose this is done for. It's done to pit 2 groups of minorities against each other. It's done to divide and rule. So instead, they stand with us in solidarity, and we are basically twins. We are flip sides of the same coin. We are mirror images of each other, both having exercised our treaty right to freedom of movement. If you look at the cover illustration, when you put them next to each other, you will see that the humans in the picture form a family. And that is because we are all one big, happy European family. So on the Remain scene, coming to International Women's Week, we are colloquially known as the In Limbo Ladies. And I wonder if it's connected to the same reason why you have 75% female volunteers in the 3 million. Because so many of our groups, and consequently our advocates, are women. It turned out that there was an imbalance in our testimonies for the first book. there were far more women than men who submitted their testimonies. Now, at first we actually thought it was because maybe women are more gobby, maybe they were more prepared to call it out, to say something, to vent, but actually I think it might have a different reason. We can't be sure, but we do suspect that it actually reflects the reality that there are more women who are from the EU 27 countries married to British men and residing in the UK than the other way around. Because funnily enough, when we collated the testimonies for the second book, we found that there were more British men than women who had ventured abroad. Mm-hmm. So we actually had more male testimonies in the second book. We don't know exactly why or how this is, but that's how it is. So there you go. So we are, like I said, we work very closely with the3million. I'll come to that in a minute. So we at the Limbo Project focus on the human side, and we aim to touch hearts and open minds by giving a voice to a few of the individuals who have been portrayed as the depersonalized mass of migrants. Christina alluded to Farage in front of that infamous poster. This is actually and factually incorrect. We are citizens, British people included. We are all equal and benefiting from the same rights. These are really important principles that we must hold on to and not allow anybody to tell us differently. Because something has happened in Britain to demote us from EU citizens to EU migrants and immigrants. And it was done to dehumanize and vilify us. This other way normalizes xenophobia and racism. Where do you come from is no longer an innocent question expressing curiosity and interest. And I would really like to claim that back. We don't really feel welcome anymore. Many of our group members embarked on their exodus, but many feel stuck. They cannot leave for a multitude of reasons, and therefore they are now obliged by the British government to apply for settled status. Personally, I'm exhausted. I wish I could leave, but I cannot uproot my husband and children only to put them in limbo elsewhere. How do you think I felt having to tell my daughter that I don't actually know whether I would still have the right to be here when she starts secondary school in September? It wasn't a happy day, I can tell you. So there's a very simple question for everyone. Where is home? Home is where the heart is. Well, your heart can be in lots of places. I'm sure we've all been on a holiday where we left a little bit of our heart. I know some of my heart is in the Caribbean and some is in Brazil. So, you know. Or is home just the place where you live? Well, I have lived in the UK for 30 years, 27 of them feeling very at home in Merseyside. I proudly call myself an adopted Scouser. Even though I wasn't born here, I feel I had the good fortune and the privilege to fall in love with Liverpool as a student. And the locals here taught us incomers to be just as open and welcoming as Liverpool. And now this city appears to be an isolated bastion of friendship in a sea of indifference and xenophobia. I came here for the love of my chosen subject. I fell in love with a place, and after falling in love with a Scotsman, I brought him here to be with me. Freedom of movement enabled me to follow my heart and my dreams. That's what people do. Human beings have moved and migrated since time immemorial. Migration should be a human right because we are a migratory species. So now I would like to illustrate some ways in which the EU settlement scheme, or the rather unsettled status we EU 27 citizens now have to apply for, is levered to disadvantage women. And I will use my own recent experience of being coerced by this government to beg for permission to stay in my home of 30 years to illustrate this. Before looking at the process, however, please bear in mind that the very existence of the EU settlement scheme in its current form is a violation of human rights. It, by definition, reduces the rights I had already acquired. Christina already alluded to that. In 2018, a female Prime Minister removed the right to vote from 3.6 million people in the same year as celebrating the centenary of the suffragettes. And incidentally, we have campaigned, the 3million have campaigned, and others individually, specifically the Liberal Democrat Party, for us to be enfranchised in the local elections on the 2nd of May. It was confirmed last week that yes, we are in the franchise, but we had to fight for that tooth and nail. We shouldn't have to fight for it. It is our right. We're having to fight for the rights we already have. We're not trying to get anything that is new to us. We're trying to keep what we already have. So I do appreciate that a solution has to be found to, what to do with EU27 citizens resident in the UK, so that they can prove what rights they have. And none of us would object to a simple registration. The 3 million lobbied the UK government very hard to try and achieve this, but that's not what we are getting here. This is an application. An application can be rejected, and I was made to apply for rights which I had previously acquired and which were illegally taken from me by Theresa May's Home Office in 2011 without any information being made available. And that's, I'm alluding to the comprehensive sickness insurance that Christina mentioned. The crux here is that an EU directive from 2004, EU Directive 2004/38 to be precise, is used against us by the Home Office, and only since 2011. So from 2004 to 2011 this was not used in that way. And Theresa May changed the way in which the law or the directive is interpreted. For all the other European Union countries, being registered with the NHS fulfills the requirement to have comprehensive sickness insurance. They basically say NHS equals CSI. If you have an EHIC card with the NHS, if you have an NHS number, you're registered with a GP, you have it. To this day, universities tell new international students arriving that all they have to do is to register with a GP. So where does this CSI come in? So the UK government is saying that the NHS is not equivalent to CSI. That's what they changed. So anyway, in order to reduce the risk that our family would be torn apart, and for the sake of my children, I decided to apply for settled status. First problem presents itself in the document checking app, which was created specifically for the purpose of applying for the EU settlement scheme. By the way, the 3 million produced this very handy checklist. Do you remember when they got it? But they've been out for some time. You made them quite a long time ago. Keep a hold of all passports, national ID cards, make sure your name is on bills, on council tax bills, and so on. We shouldn't have to do this. The very fact that the 3 million exist is a violation of human rights. We shouldn't have to, because our rights were automatic and they should be automatically guaranteed. There should be no question about it. And actually the Leave campaign said so on the 1st of June 2016, but we all know that they lied. So, the document checking app. It can work well, technically. It's technically quite adequate if you have the right kind of device and if you're in full employment for the last 5 years without interruption. It requires a fairly new phone, and only an Android 6 or higher will do. Well, you can't use an iPhone, so Apple users, sorry. I have an Android 7, so I'm all right. No. I went to download the app. Turns out my phone hasn't got NFC. It has to have NFC capability as well to read the chip in your passport. So I had to borrow my husband's phone. So forgive me the use of a stereotype, but it is a fact that many women, especially of an older generation, are not, although I include myself in that, because 2 days ago I was messaging Aidan to go, Aidan, please help, can you tell me how I download this? So include myself, hold my hands up, absolutely. We're not particularly tech savvy, and therefore might struggle to even access the app. Also, we lead busy lives. So, my husband downloaded it on a Sunday, and I think it took us 10 days to actually both be physically in the same room and awake and not doing something else to do this, to tackle this. So, although anyone who has been here since before December 1988 can apply for indefinite leave to remain via the Windrush scheme, which actually, if anybody was to ask me, I would say I would recommend doing that, and I kind of wish I'd done it myself. This is not very well known, it's not very well publicized, and it also involves finding a multitude of evidence. So that's why I decided to take part in the settled status trial for ease and speed. And I decided to just bite the bullet and put up with the data protection issues. So not only is the Home Office exempt from data protection rules, they can do with my data whatever they please. So they don't have to tell me what they do with my data. And also, as part of the app, I have to agree that my data can be shared with third parties in the UK or overseas, and they don't have to disclose who they're sharing it with. They can sell my fingerprints to Coca-Cola. And actually, my husband has just had to renew his passport. They do the same to British citizens as well. So I would argue that we are fighting also on behalf of British citizens. So I have the added complication of being a German citizen. And that means that if I were to acquire British citizenship after Brexit, I would automatically lose my German citizenship. I'm sure you would all agree that I would be stupid to risk my German passport, so hence speed is of the essence for me. Secondly, bank accounts and household bills are often in the name of the husband, especially if he's the main breadwinner. Many of the women who are now forced to apply for this new status have been in the UK for many years, decades even, and we've already heard mention of Dwight Cruiser. I've been here forever, why should I? And their instinct is absolutely correct. They shouldn't have to do anything. And what will happen is they will want to renegotiate their mortgage, and the bank will say, show us proof of your status. Or they will one day be refused medical treatment, and that's when it will come out that, oh, I'm supposed to have applied for this? When? Why did nobody tell me? So, only the last 5 years are relevant to the Settled Status app. The application process requires 2 contacts with HMRC and DWP per year. But as a family in receipt of working tax credits, that's only renewed annually, meaning that the automated part of the system does not have enough evidence to prove residence because it only has 1 contact point per year. Of course, we all know that it is more common for women to take career breaks and be carers, so they might not have those additional contact points with DWP and HMRC that you would have if you're working. So again, it is skewed against them. And they end up struggling to find 5 years' worth of documentation. Although the Home Office website states that annual bank summaries can be used, I was informed by my caseworker that these are not sufficient because they do not show any transactions, and hence I should supply council tax bills. Lucky that my name is on them. If it wasn't, I would have had to submit 5 years' worth of bank statements. However, the Home Office's IT system can only accept uploads of up to 5 documents. But if I'm supplying bank statements for 5 years, then 60 statements are needed. You might also be surprised that there are many women out there who do not have bank accounts in their own names. Or they might be in a married name, but their passport is in a maiden name. So we have problems there. If we had come here as immigrants, then we might have kept records. But since we came here as citizens, exercising their treaty right to free movement, there was no need to keep old bills or statements and payslips. From 2011 until January 2019, I was unable to apply for permanent residence because I did not keep records from before the year 2000 proving that I had comprehensive sickness insurance while I was a student. Am I supposed to have foreseen Brexit 20 years ago? It does make me wonder whether the words retroactive laws are illegal mean anything to this government. Finally, and most worryingly, domestic violence and coercive control. Imagine that you left an abusive relationship with nothing but your life and the clothes on your back, and sometimes not even then. You would not have any evidence which you could supply to the Home Office to prove your residence. You will remember that I used my husband's phone to apply for settled status. What if he decided to say, you need me to stay in this country? That's what one of our group members was told by her husband. And we know of others who stayed in relationships for fear of the effect it would have on their status. I would like to read you a testimony which was shared with me. This woman, after a marriage where her husband controlled her, found herself divorced from him and without any proof of her residency in the UK or of her years of working for the family business owned by the husband. Her ex-husband and she have shared custody of their 3 children, and she lives in terror of not being able to continue living here as she has no resources, not being able to prove her residency in the UK, and to be sent back to France, separated from her children. He seems to be playing on that to still abuse her. She did not manage to find work, I think partly because of the national preference related to Brexit. Plus, there are not many jobs in Cornwall. I also know she had problems to get unemployment benefits. She is homeless, very fragile, and on strong antidepressants. If a society is judged on how it treats its weakest members, what should be the judgment on Brexit Britain? Should we stand by and allow this evil to prevail? This is not just about exiting the EU, it's also about the hostile environment and how human rights are violated. 25 years ago, I campaigned with the NUS against cuts to student grants. I didn't have to do this. I did not receive a grant. I worked in Germany during the holidays, earning 3 times what I could earn here to supplement the allowance from my dad, and my fees were paid for by the German government. I campaigned in solidarity with my classmates, and now I do these talks to ask for solidarity in challenging the Brexit this government is delivering, and the way in which everyone's human rights are violated. I'm going to leave you with a quote from the Italian poet Dante, whose Inferno inspired the title and the cover illustration of the forest of our books. He starts with the words, "Midway upon the journey of my life, I found myself in a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost." And he ends by saying, "E quindi uscimi a rivedere le stelle." Thence we came forth to re-behold the stars. And that is the wish from everybody at the Limbo Project, that we can one day re-behold the stars as happy and settled as we were before the referendum. Thank you so much for listening.